thank you for your super chat, said, how do you explain Numbers 31-35, where soldiers capture 32,000 virgins, with 32 of them being a tax for the Lord? What does God do with these virgins? Do they become sexual slaves?
You have to read Numbers chapter 25, because Numbers 31 is coming out of the incident in Numbers 25. And what happens there is adult women are used to seduce the Jewish men who participate in sexual immorality and then in idolatry, and it leads the nation of Israel astray. In Numbers 31, God is not calling for the rape of virgin girls. But the reason that the virgin girls are given a special license is, and protection is, because a virgin girl was usually 12 years old or younger. Usually girls were not virgins, 13 years of age and older. And so those women who had led Israel into sexual immorality and into idolatry were judged. But those younger girls were not judged. And therefore, the Jewish people are accepting the younger girls in, not to be raped, not that they have to have sex with anybody, but they're being accepted into the Jewish community to be protected, to be provided for. And to conclude that because they're virgins, therefore they're used to be raped, is such a twisting, such an addition to that text, it's scary.
Gotcha. Thank you very much for your question.
They're plunder, though. I mean, I think that's critical. They're listed along as plunder amongst the other things.
And so what does that mean, Josh?
They are property.
Yeah, I mean,
what does that mean, Matt?
It means that they are subject to being married off, that it means that their consent is no longer required, that they are not autonomous constructs running their own life. They are
married off. It was tremendously humanitarian, though, how it was done.
My gosh.
So
You guys are just going to talk about how wonderful the Jews were, because after they slaughtered everybody, they kept the young girls for themselves, but they didn't actually rape them.
If you're going to do that, then you have to say something equivalent to, well, look, if somebody came in here and murdered me and took my wife and kids and then burned my house down, hey, at least they took them out. That was humane. They didn't let them die here in the fire, and they didn't murder them. They took them out. Look, they took care of them for 25 years. They kept them in the house, gave them a place to eat. Nobody would do that, right? Nobody would make that argument that that's humane. And that's what you're doing. I mean, that's how that's coming across to me.
Meanwhile, they killed all the little boys. They killed all the little boys under 12.
We're not saying all the little boys under 12. People who behave that way.
They killed all
You're
the
missing the
boys
whole
under
point,
12.
Josh, of what we've been making. And that's not fair of you to do that. That's never been our point. That was the ideal. That was the humane thing to do. Never once did we say that.
But that's what I think that's what you did. Stuart, isn't that what you said? That was the humane thing to do?
Gabriel,
I'm sorry that you can't understand that something may not be the ideal and might still be immoral.
Sorry. If I misunderstood you, I'm sorry. That's my fault if I misunderstood.
Gabriel K, thanks for your super chat, said, why is sin wrong if God created it? Would any of you punish a being you created with bugs, or would you fix your creation?
God didn't create sin. God gave us beautiful gifts like a tongue and speech. And instead of encouraging people and loving people and respecting people the way God created us to, we've used our language, our speech, our tongue to manipulate, to deceive, to lie, to cut people down. So sin is not very creative. Sin is simply taking the good gifts that God has given us and using them for a perverted purpose. That's true for sex, be it rape. It's true for slavery, as opposed to really respecting someone and paying them a fair wage, instead enslaving them. That's a perversion of God's good creation. That's what sin is.
Bagos Spanners, thank you for your question, said, if God sent Cliffe back in time and commanded him to kill the Amalekites, would he do it? And if not, why not?
That's very similar to asking, and if I was born in Iran, would I be a Muslim? I don't have the faintest idea how to answer a question like that, because I wasn't born in Iran. I was born in New York City. So if for me to go back in time is not an option. I don't know what I would believe or do if I had been born 3,000 years ago. It'd be preposterous for me to presume.
It's just a hypothetical. It's asking, it's put yourself in that. So I'm getting ready to do a video on the slaughter of the Amalekites and whether or not it was moral. Possibly the same person ask you this question. I'm just baffled at how we're sitting here having a discussion. When we talk about specifics, you go to general, and how someone can be asked a question about Numbers 31 and immediately say, oh, you have to understand Numbers 25, but you've been preaching for 40 years. You came to a debate on slavery and morality, and you hadn't studied Exodus 21:1, the very first verse in the chapter that's most relevant to this. it seems, and it feels like we're talking about specifics and you just deflect to generalities over and over. And I'm not saying you're dishonest or anything else. I don't know how you can expect to overcome specific instructions with general feelings.
Well, I'm rather amazed at how many people interpret the Bible in an overly literalistic way. I got to debate Bart Ehrman down at UNC Chapel Hill.
Mhm.
And before Bart and I had our debate, we had dinner together. And during dinner, he looked across the table at me and said, "Cliff, I used to be a more conservative Christian than you are." I said, "Really, Bart? Tell me about it." He said, "Oh, I went to Moody Bible College. I went to Wheaton College. I used to be a more conservative Christian than you." And I found that really interesting because during the debate, he took such a wooden approach to interpreting the scripture. I felt like I was talking to a hyper-conservative fundamentalist Christian who had just swapped to the other end of the spectrum. Now he was demanding a specificity. See, what he was telling me was, "Cliff, because there are between 200 and 400,000 manuscript errors in the 25,000 manuscripts that we have in the New Testament, therefore the Bible is not inerrant. Therefore, I cannot accept it." That is sad. That is
He's
really
correct.
sad. The Bible has never, ever claimed to have specifically precise transmission of 25,000 manuscripts of the Bible. That is such a ludicrous idea. It's scary.
And it might have been
Unless you're a
useful.
hyper-fundamentalist Christian or a liberal who's trying to twist the Bible and make it look stupid.
I think I'm sorry,
Okay.
James. Sorry. I think part of the issue here is that I mentioned this earlier. It does seem like sometimes that you guys kind of have a foot in both hermeneutical approaches. And on the one hand, you'll say things like the Canaanites were really, really wicked when, like, we don't have evidence of that. But the biblical narrative says that they were. And so you kind of go with the biblical narrative. But then it seems like you say, well, Moses, gives these commands. Well, we don't know that these were legislative. Well, that's sort of looking at it, from a more historical critical standpoint. So I think that's where the confusion is.
So be it.
Next up, Ann Ben C says, if Stewart and Cliff were to ascribe the laws that a nation should abide by, would they copy what the Bible writes about slavery or change it? So, if you guys could make your own country, would you copy what the Bible writes about slavery, or would you change it?
Well, see, this gets kind of back to Matt's last point in terms of the specifics of it and the feelings, and then Josh's point on the 1 foot in the door and the 1 foot out the door. See, I think the heavy lifting on the Christian's part when it comes to a debate like this, it becomes really exegeting every single verse of the Old Testament. And that's okay. That can be called for and demanded of. But then I would take that question that the listener just asked, and I would ask that eventually to Matt and Josh in the sense of, okay, in an ancient Near Eastern context, what would it look like for God to have the right types of laws, the right types of commands? Or does he need to wipe out A&E altogether and just start over? Should he have created civilizations and had his hands just in every single pool in such a way where we didn't even have to talk about slavery? We didn't have to talk about polygamy. We didn't have to talk about any type of evil.
I just find it preposterous.
That's the frustration for me, where it's if the Christian is going to be lifting up these heavy rocks, at what point is the atheist going to step in and lift just kind of a little stone?
No. Because this is
Yes. That was a very good point Stuart just made.
No, it's not, and I'm going to explain to you why it's not. If you let me
right
finish.
there, Matt.
I'm going to explain to you why it's not. But you won't shut up.
I'm kidding. I want to hear the Dillahunty wisdom. Bring it in.
You are acting as if the atheists are asking for God to dip in and micromanage every little thing, and that is not that. You're waving your hands, but
no, I'm not saying. Don't. That's not in a straw man, steel man. That's not what I'm saying. Josh, did you think it was fair what I was getting at, or no? Was it just totally unfair?
I think that the question, what's behind, and Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, is, again, I'm not an ethicist, but what's behind our overall point is that, theologically speaking, the God that is so often described is the omni-God, right? Omnibenevolent, omniscient, omnipotent. And in that sense, this deity who makes very strong commands, both in the Old and the New Testament, doesn't have what we would look back and say the consistency to say slavery is immoral. And that seems, I don't know, counterintuitive, maybe, why am I blanking on the word?
Right.
What's the, Matt, help me, what's the logical term? Why am I blanking on the logical term of conflicting?
I don't know how to help you. I don't think I have anything else to say tonight because Stuart sat there and suggested, and we can rewind it and look at the words, that it's almost like the atheists are like, how much should God be involved in all this? And what we're saying is not, we think that God should have been involved in micromanaging or anything else. I think at a minimum, I'm expecting the bare minimum, and that is for a God to not say, hey, it's okay to own people's property, when a God should say it is not okay to own people's property. I'm asking for the bare minimum of humanity, which does not even exist at all in the Bible. And you're pretending as if I'm asking God to be involved in all these little things and make all these laws and all that. No, I'm just asking you not to get it completely backward.
And all I was asking was just for a little bit of heavy lifting from you. And so that was my only point.
I don't have to do heavy lifting if
That's
I've raised an ethical objection and you come back with a straw man. There's no heavy lifting to do. Slavery is immoral. What the Bible advocates is immoral.
Who says?
I do. I answered that the last time you asked.
Okay, and that's
Who says and why?
I say why, because it is against the things that we know and understand to be best for individual humans and humanity. We have learned that slavery is not good for the slaves. Slavery is not good for the slave owners. Slavery is not good for the society. We know this from the evidence about what makes a better society and a worse society.
But you said if it does benefit society, though. Matt said if it benefits society.
How neat, Stuart, that you go to a fictional thing that I already said wasn't possible.
So what we have here is, I want to let everybody know, I pinned it twice in the chat. We